The African George Floyds and the response continent. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The killing of George Floyd in the city of Minneapolis on May the 25th capitalized publicly the violence perpetrated so far against Black inside the US and beyond. Since the video went viral, raising protests and movements around the world, Africa did not remain silent. Moussa Faki, the head of the African Union, was among the first political leaders to denounce this atrocity, even if he was criticized for not raising the same concern when it comes to violence in Africa. Following the Black Lives Matter protest, many Africans organized protests in African cities, including Dakar, Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town, to denounce police brutality, the exploitation of the poor, and the ongoing suffering of many Africans. If Mr. Floyd's last words, "I can't breathe," captivated so much attention and produced unexpected effects, some would say there are millions George Floyds who are releasing the same expression of pain without succeeding in drawing the attention of the world. In Africa, systematic and systemic violence against vulnerable citizens has become common. Indeed, George Floyd's public assassination is the symbol of million victims crucified by exploitation, neocolonialism, violence, poverty, and silence. I call African George Floyds all the situations taking place on the continent whereby lives are crushed to death and millions of people reduced into subhumans with the complicity of African leaders and their Western allies. I have selected 4 domains from which we can connect many realities: poor governance, the recolonization of a continent, corruption, and the victimization of Africa. To address these challenges, state leaders, educators, and Pan-Africanist civilians are active, and their commitment provides hope for the future. First, the situations that prevent Africans to breathe. Poor governance. Poor governance is one of the challenges which is undermining lives in Africa. The abuse of power and violence perpetrated against citizens by state leaders are making significant victims. When peaceful protesters who take the streets to demand justice are welcomed by guns, violence becomes an instrument for governing. Despite the efforts of the African Union to condemn publicly attempts to change or violate established term limits and military coup, many presidents are still maintaining themselves in power over decades. The illegal transitioning of power is one of the dramatic scenarios happening in Africa. The ongoing situation in Chad is one of the most concerning situations in Africa these days. A military council seized power last week for a transitional period on April 20th, after the killing of President Idriss Déby, who ruled the country for 30 years. Against the law, the very will of the people, President Emmanuel Macron from France, who attended the funeral, seems to back the anti-constitutional regime. Restriction of press freedom is another concern in some African countries. Indeed, authoritarian governments continue to use legal pressure, imprisonment, and other forms of harassment to suppress independent reporting. In so doing, fundamental rights of citizens are restricted, and lack of accountability and transparency is another major obstacle to fair governance. The recolonization of the continent. One does not have to be a genius in geopolitics to ask why is it that instability on the African continent seems to be concentrated in highly resourced areas. To have the answer, we just need to understand that the continent is considered as a God-given loan of resources by the Western countries. The East Congo, Libya, South Sudan, the Sahel region, the Horn of Africa, and the Cabo Delgado province in northern Mozambique are among the places where violence is prevailing in Africa is bleeding. And these regions have in common natural resources found in abundance. All of this is happening with the support of puppets and emasculated rulers placed by their colonial masters. The recolonization of the African continent is taking place through the ongoing deployment of the Western military bases in African countries, despite the protest of African citizens in Mali, Senegal, Central African Republic, and Chad. Neo-colonization of African countries by former colonial countries and now by China and Russia is operating through the conquest of lands everywhere powerful countries' interests are threatened. Terrorism in the Sahel region has become a real business that benefits France and its allies. Since the killing of President Gaddafi with the support of the NATO and the creation of violence in Libya, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Chad, and Cameroon, the Sahel region is systematically recolonized for its resources. Consequence, thousands of people are killed, displaced, violated, or reduced into subhumans on their own lands. Corruption. Corruption and violence are being the main tools used since the era of slavery and colonization to impose cooperation with African countries. According to Professor Lumumba from Kenya, corruption in Africa is killing more than civil wars. Some data from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development estimates that African countries lose $88.6 billion to illicit capital flight annually through a variety of methods, from tax evasions and deliberate misenforcement of trade shipments to criminal acts like corruption and theft. But when Transparency International is reporting corruption in the African continent, it is important to mention that the money of corruption is flowing to the Western secured banks. Like an ocean, corruption has become an international flowing business with different layers. Big fish are from the Western corrupted institutions, more organized. Small fish are African corrupted leaders, and tiny fish are policemen and women, public servants, and unemployed youth, striving to survive and take care of their families. African former dictators like Mobutu Sese Seko, Jean Bedel Bokassa, or Idi Amin Dada have stolen billions from their countries and secured it in Western countries. This money has never returned back to Africa. When people are questioning why young Africans are killed in the oceans, trying to join Europe by all means, the answer is simple. They are pursuing the direction of their resources taken away from them. When people are questioning why some African regions are not in peace, part of the answer comes from the contradictory reality of countries like France, Belgium, and the UK, who do not produce gold or diamond, but are the best traders of these minerals in the world. How can we get peace and promote lives in Africa when the 5 countries who have veto power, including China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US, are the best sellers of guns in Africa? When UN soldiers are sent to African countries to maintain peace where there is no peace, the contradiction is obvious. Indeed, peace is to be made by strong institutions instead of thousands of troops, only good to secure resources to benefit themselves. The world is exploited by gangsters, And Africa is paying the highest price in this gangsterization, the victimization of Africa. Africa does not need charity, pity, or mourning, but justice, respect, and a win-win fair cooperation. Charity becomes real and necessary to solidify relations only when justice is achieved. The victimization of Africa by the rest of the world is another tool of systemic violence used against Africa. It consists in presenting the continent as a uniform country with a special focus on problems instead of regarding opportunities. The truth on the history of Africa, with both its positive and negative aspects, deserve to be illustrated, taught and transmitted by Africans first, second by all people of goodwill. For systematic violence is nourished when the truth is distorted. In fact, there is no racial justice without cognitive and theoretical justice. The victimization of Africa can become a pitfall when the denouncers are not situating responsibilities and do not seek sustainable solutions with Africans. Second, how do African countries respond to these different challenges? More and more in Africa, we are witnessing that some leaders are brought to court and democracy is happening in many countries. When we witness former President Jacob Zuma facing credible allegations for corruption in South Africa, the power of law enforcement is visible. When countries like Ghana, Benin, Botswana, Lesotho, or Zambia are honoring democracy with strong institutions and peaceful transitions, Africa is responding positively to the needs of people. When late President Joseph Magufuli from Tanzania passed the baton to next generations, after placing his country among the most promising in Africa, one can really assert there are leaders for whom Black lives matter. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, started on January 1st, is another key step made by the African Union to create more connections in the continent and lift up Africans from poverty. Surely, the commitment of Pan-Africanists and civil leaders like Professor Lumumba, Dr. Arikana, Semi Keba, Omotunde Kalala to raise conscience for unity, peace, and solidarity is positively generating self-determination in the youth. And when civil society organizations, including Yanamar in Senegal, le Ballet Citoyen in Burkina Faso, Lutte pour le Changement in the Congo, succeed in making constitutions being respected, citizens are really participating in law enforcement. In fact, Black lives matter in Africa. Third, reasons for hope and Jesuits' leadership in Africa. If negative narratives over the past centuries have presented Africa as a threat continent, the truth is more and more to be nuanced, above all when accountability is demanded. Of course, challenges, problems are still characterizing the continent, but its transformation during these recent decades have been remarkable. Africa is crafting its own destiny and will be referred to in many coming years as a land of great opportunities, peaceful and inspiring countries to partner with. And Jesuits in Africa are part of this dream because they are among the African continent peaceful leaders. Thanks to their participation in politics, education, publication, research, youth training, refugee service, healthcare, social and spiritual centers activities, and parishes running, the leadership of the Companions of Jesus in Africa is tangible and growing. Jesuits are working to build robust and vibrant minds in young Africans. Their objectives: get Africans moved from complaining to the creation of their own history. Get young Africans move from expecting foreign angelic saviors to forging their own tools for power. Get men and women stop imitating others and make Africa great from Pan-Africanist raw giants. Get Africans become authentic Africans and dare to invent a flourishing future with critical imagination and audacity. Get African leaders, trust strong leaders, strong institutions, strong mindsets, and strong capabilities.